Here we are, episode 13 of Merriwether's World. I am your host, Mark Merriwether Vorderbruggen, and of course, my co-host, my daughter, Miniwether. So tonight, a couple of things. First off, we don't have any sponsors, so bummer. Continuing on. However, I do have to do a special shout out to an Anson Narin. His mom has said really great things about him and that he really loves all the foraging world. And so, hey, Anson, keep up the good work. Your mom is really, really proud of you. So, cool. Other things going on, not a lot. I didn't burn up this week at work. That's always exciting. No fires or explosions or anything like that. So we will actually be able to continue on. I guess it's actually start the medicinal weeds and wildflowers of Texas and less important places. So I don't know, do we have anyone actually out in the audience yet?
No comments yet, but I see more people entering the chat.
Hey, hi people
Welcome
entering
in.
the chat. Okay, I always send out invitations in hopes. Oh, I will say I sent out a lot of invitations to my old Minnesota friends. So those of you that are tuning in, haha, you are cold, I am warm. Okay, now well, I don't miss Minnesota right now, but you know, in June, July, August, then Minnesota's kind of nice. All right, so I can't think of anything else that's important, so we may as well get started on why you are actually here, the presentation. So as I said, today we are starting the medicinal weeds and wildflowers of Texas. Now, these are not just the wintertime ones. These are ones that are found all over, all over Texas, and B, multiple times during the year. So it's not a January, December specific sort of thing. I'm covering lots of weeds that are all over the place. So, moving right ahead, and I need to get things lined up here. Okay. So bee balm. Bee balm is a very common wildflower. It's also used domestically in gardens. Beautiful looking, beautiful smelling. To me, it always kind of reminds me of Beaker from the Muppets with the hair thing going on. So the flower of the bee balm is usually made into a tisane, which is the fancy way of saying tea. But infused in hot water, the flower works as a fever reducer. Maybe not quite as good as willow, but it still will help, especially with strong fevers. As a digestive aid, especially if you have an upset stomach from overeating or gas or things like that, it will help settle your stomach. It's like a carminative. Again, the tea. An anti-colic. If you have a baby that is crying, A, you have my sympathy. B, I understand completely what that's like. And C, if you happen to have some dried bee balm flowers, you can make a lovely tea / tisane for the child. Native American techniques were to soak a piece of leather or rawhide in any number of different sedative teas to give the child then to chew and suck on until they were pacified. Seems like a good idea to me. The bee balm, the tisane, or a water infusion, hot water infusion of this plant, is antimicrobial, antibacterial, so you can use it as a skin wash, both to prevent infections and to treat infections. Now, as far as psoriasis goes, there isn't much research in that, but my theory is it certainly can't hurt or make things worse. As far as mimics go, there really isn't anything. It has this very, just exciting purple flower. Like I said, it reminds me of Beaker from the Muppets. It kind of looks like almost like fireworks. They're very common for sale at different nurseries in late winter. Right at the beginning of traditional planting season. So here in Texas, that's usually mid-February or so. But then they can go all summer long if you have enough water for them. So the bee balm, a really nice floral, citrusy, fruity sort of flavor, really, really good. But think of it as a calming agent and an antibacterial agent. Okay, next, betony, and this is really common this time of year. It is a wintertime plant. This is a wild mint. So if you know mints, mints have a square stem. They have opposite alternating leaves. So as you go up this square stem, you'll have two leaves directly across from each other, and then the next set up will be rotated 90 degrees and so on up the stem, the square stem. Look for it in kind of shaded, moist, ideally sandy areas. It seems to really thrive along where streams and ravines cut through the woods. Now, there's an old Italian saying that if you have a cold, sell your coat and buy betony. That would be taking things to extremes, but betony has shown to work really well in basically kind of relieving a lot of the symptoms from colds and congestions. I would also assume, I haven't practiced this or tested this because I don't have allergies, but I suspect the betony tea would also work for allergies. And I just there's a post-it note here that okay, I'm back. So the leaves and the flowers are both drank as a tisane. They were also smoked quite a bit. Over in Europe, the traditional way is before they had pipes, they were still smoking herbs before the New World was discovered and the tobacco and other medicinal smoked herbs came into not being, I guess, use. But like I said, over in Italy, they would start with a charcoal briquette, burning charcoal briquette, sprinkle the dried leaves of the betony on the briquette, and then inhale the smoke that was coming off it. And that actually would help, basically get it to your sinuses to help fight the cold symptoms. So again, this is found this time of year. It will continue on into about February. Maybe a little later this year, I suspect we're going to have a cold winter, and so it might hang around a bit longer than that. But really, it's a fall into, like late fall into early spring sort of plant is where you can find it. Very common in sandy, wooded areas along stream banks and ravines and places of water. Okay, do we have any questions?
Thus far, we do not.
All right, just a minute then. I've been talking a lot lately, so my throat is getting a bit raw. Oh, I did think of something. Those of you who want to take a class with me, I got several coming up this Saturday at the Houston Arboretum. If you could put the link. There are still five slots open for the class, so we limit the class size to 16 people, so just to keep it small and intimate and everyone can get around the plants and we can harvest the plants we need without really damaging the overall number of plants. So this Saturday, 1 to 5 p.m. at the Houston Arboretum. Merriwether is putting up a link in case you want to actually sign up for it. Side note, the Houston Chronicle is also sending a reporter there just to check this whole foraging thing out. So that might either inspire you to show up, so maybe you can get your name in the newspaper, or maybe inspire you to hide from getting your name in the newspaper. No promises either way. But yeah, this Saturday at the Houston Arboretum, it is I believe, the last class for the year, and then start up again at the end of January. And then remember, all upcoming classes can be found over on the Foraging Texas website, www.foragingtexas.com, along with over 200 very highly detailed plant posts, the different edible and medicinal plants here in Texas, multiple pictures, uses, mimics, how to tell what's what and how to use it, everything like that. So, yeah. Okay, hey, do we have a question?
We got several, actually.
Oh, cool.
Influx of questions after you asked. So first of all, can you store the dried plant? I'm assuming they mean betony.
Yes. Remember, when you are drying herbs, I do not recommend putting them in the dehydrator. You want to just let them hang to air dry in a cool, dark, dry place. You do not want to apply heat to them. Even the heat from the dehydrator does two things. First, The heat from the dehydrator screws up the enzyme whose purpose is to start breaking down the cell wall. So without that enzyme there, the cell wall will stay intact and all the good chemicals will stay trapped inside the cell. Second, a number of the beneficial chemicals are volatile. They evaporate away very easily. So with heat being applied to it, there are still the pores on the leaf, and with enough heat, you can drive off some of these volatile compounds, thereby reducing the medicinal benefit of the plant. So air dry in a cool, dry place.
All right. So the next one is, can the coccinea species be used similarly?
Good question. I don't know off the top of my head. Let me just see the cochineas. Not positive. I'm not sure. Sorry. Okay. How about a question I can answer?
Does it keep well dried?
Oh, yes, yes. So once it's dried, it pretty much lasts up until the following fall. General rule of thumb I have with herbs, and both from practical use and talking to different, much more experienced herbalists, that basically plants have this ability to hang out until the next set of plants is available to go. So if possible, yeah, once it's dried, just again, keep it in a cool, dry, dark place. I recommend actually crumbling it up, putting in a jar, capping the jar, and calling it good. The more you can get in there, the less oxygen that's in there, the better off it'll be. Since it's already dry, you should not have a problem with bacteria or mildew or anything like that growing on it. So once it's dried and crumbly, you should be good to go to store it really until the next season when that plant is available.
Can you use just the airflow in the dehydrator with no heat?
Yeah, if you're not using heat in the dehydrator, just using the fan, that's fine. That probably keeps your house not looking like a witch's house like ours does most of the time, where I got plants drying from every surface that I can hang things from. So yeah, I'm just thinking the volume you would need. You might run into problems there. But then again, I probably overdo it in my herb collection. But yeah, to go back to your question, yes, just using the fan is a great way of using the dehydrator without any heat to dry the plants. And we have another.
Last question about betony. What amount of betony do you use for 1 cup of tea?
Treat it like a regular tea to begin with. So, a teaspoon, not a heaping teaspoon, but just like, just a mild teaspoon worth in a cup of hot water. So this is actually more. This is like 2 cups. And this is just some other herbal tea blend. But yeah, just treat it like you would regular tea. Once it's dried, it's going to be very condensed and potent. Remember, plants are 60, 70, 80% water. So once all that's gone, you have a lot of plant material and a lot of medicinal compounds, kind of condensed in a tight little area. So, is that it? Do I know that person? Okay, sorry.
No more questions. Awesome.
Merriwether was pointing out a name like I was supposed to recognize the person, but she's really, I don't know, maybe her boyfriend is watching or something.
No.
Oh, she says no. Okay, so betony, yeah. Look for it in undergrowthy areas, in the woods, East Texas mainly. Not so much. I found some in the hill country, but really you kind of want loose, sandy, wet, shaded soil. Side note, this grows really well from just a little bit of root, but like a mint, the first year you'll have a lot of it, and the year after that you will be inundated with it and have a plethora of mint. So I recommend planting it with the same caution you would plant any mint in your garden, because you can end up with a lot of it. Alrighty, just over here. Okay, bitter cress. You might remember this from the edible weeds last few weeks. It has a wonderful horseradishy flavor. But the bitter cress, it's loaded with a class of chemical called glucosin. I thought I could just roll it off the tongue. Glucosinolates. Think of them as nitrogen-y, sulfur-y sort of compounds. And whenever you start sticking nitrogens and sulfurs on things, usually if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Another compound in the bitter cress is the lutein, which is a component of the eye structure. So it's recommended for just making sure your body has what it needs to keep your eyes healthy. So the glucosinolates, it's a kind of a sugary molecule with lots of also oxygens on it that can grab onto toxins. Think of it as almost like a chelating agent, if you know what a chelating agent is, but it's something that will grab onto the different toxins and help your body excrete them. So bitter cress is great if you're feeling like you just, been hanging out in Houston too long and breathing the air and getting all sorts of crud from the Houston air in your lungs and so forth. A good handful of bitter cress every day will help just kind of flush your body of those toxins while making sure your eyes have everything they need to remain healthy too. As far as glaucoma, probably not something that will help there. Think of it more as keeping the structure of the eye healthy rather than, say, eye pressure issues like glaucoma. Again, how you use it, you just eat it. I love it on sandwiches or just raw. Like I said, it has kind of a horseradishy sort of flavor. And all parts have these beneficial compounds. The flowers, the green seed pods, the stems, the leaves, just eat the whole thing. The roots are good too, mashed up. And we have a question.
Actually, people can't see any of the pictures. On the PowerPoint. Sneaked all around the side here.
Because I have them here. Whoa, special effects. As far as why you can't, I have no clue. When was the last one people were able to see? Anyone? And let me see. Can you? Oops. And can you see the next one, burdock? If anyone wants to buy me a TV studio, I'm all for that. But otherwise, we're kind of doing with what we got here.
The last one they were saying is they saw mint. Some are saying betony.
Okay, so the last
Most
one.
betony.
Okay, can anyone see the pictures here with the burdock? Anyone?
No, they cannot.
So can you see the word burdock? How about if I jump forward one, where we still have the word burdock?
They cannot see it.
Okay, not a. Well, let me try something here. Burdock, 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 burdock. All right. Can you see the pictures in the foraging Texas?
No, they can see them, yes.
Okay. So you can see these pictures. So I guess we might be improvising here. Let me do one thing that might help a little. Hold on. Things are going to get weird here for a second, but just kind of work with it. Alrighty. I bet we can go even bigger. Okay. So how that? Okay, so burdock, whoops. This is going to be tricky. Let me go, there's a good picture. Well, okay, so burdock. If you are familiar with rhubarb, a lot of times people mistake burdock for rhubarb. It's not. But what you are after, from a medicinal point of view, is the roots of the burdock. So the burdock roots, you have to dig these up. And as you can see, that is 2 feet, a little over 2 feet. The center one is almost 3 feet long. The burdocks have big, thick tap roots that run down to the ground. Now, the root of the burdock root, it is mainly a liver protector. It helps the liver fight off any damage that incurs in the liver from different toxic chemicals. So it is not quite up on par with the seeds of the milk thistle, but for as far as liver protection, but a general liver protection, the burdock root has a lot of scientific proof behind it that it will help detoxify, heal, and otherwise strengthen the function of the liver. The burdock root is also an anti-inflammatory. So it's good if you have any sort of swellings, even as far as inflammation from lupus or other inflammatory diseases. There's been a lot of work showing that there is relief available. Maybe not complete healing or anything like that, but at least some relief from burdock root. Now, as far as where is the burdock found, in Texas, it really starts just north of the Dallas area and then goes all the way up into Canada. It's a kind of a wintertime plant down here, a summertime plant farther north, but here in Texas, now would be the time to be looking for it. If you are familiar with cockleburs, the cockleburs is the mimic for the burdock. So you don't want to eat the leaves necessarily of the cocklebur. The main difference, if you're familiar with cockleburs, they have kind of football-shaped, sticky, clingy seed pods, whereas the burdock has round. That's the big difference.
Got some questions.
Yes.
Alright, so they say, I have seeds for burdock, and where should I plant them? Or should I keep them out of my garden?
Definitely plant them. I believe Texas needs more burdocks. Burdocky, whatever the plural of burdock is. Where you want to plant them, you want to plant them in deep, rich, loose soil that gets a little bit of shade, so not full sun, but also does get a fair amount of moisture. So not swampy, wet, heavy mud, really, but someplace where you can keep an eye on the soil and keep it somewhat moist. And right now, since we are entering the frost season, I would wait. I'd wait till after Valentine's Day and then plant them then. Or if you have a lot of them, plant some now and plant some like in the Valentine's Day area. But loose, sandy soil, loose, rich soil, black soil, where you can easily dig down 2-3 feet to get these long tap roots from. So that's where you would plant it.
Awesome. No more questions.
No more questions?
Thus far.
All right. So still no vision. So let's go back to, so the burdock root. Oh, side note. If you live south of the Dallas area, you can usually find burdock root in Asian markets. When I go up to Minnesota, it's all over my my parents' property and all the woods around and all the farms and so forth. So it's real easy for me to get a lot of burdock root up there. But on times when I find myself running low, I'll usually go to one of the local Asian markets, like 99 Ranch. There's another one out there. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. But I'm sorry, I saw a warning come up, but we're good. Yeah, so the Asian markets usually carry the burdock root. Okay, so next I need to do some juggling here. What is next? Okay, the cat's ear. Let me try this first. Well, I apologize for technical difficulties. I don't know if anyone can see the cat's ear. But while you are looking at that and deciding yay or nay, I am going to pull it up over on here. Can they see it? I'm going to assume you can't see it. So we'll go, whoops. Okay. Cat's ear. This is one of the dandelion mimics. It's a very small plant at first, but it does grow fairly large. You can see these are almost 3 feet tall, very common weed. Let me bring up the flower here. So it really looks like a dandelion. One of the main differences is that on a dandelion, the dandelion stalk or stem will only have one flower, and it'll be at the very end of the stem, and there won't be any leaves on it. Whereas the cat's ear, it actually will have multiple flowers on the stem, and it will have leaves on the stem. And if you look in there, the flower, on the underside, it'll have these tan petals along with the yellow petals. And in the center, it'll have some brown stamen too. So slightly different from some of the others. But one of the key indicators is that tan color on the underside of the leaf. Now, the root of this, let me see if I can bring up the root. Well, okay. So it has a big taproot. The root is actually very useful. Both the leaves and the roots actually of the cat's ear are a sedative and a muscle relaxant. So with these, you would use the leaves and the root. You would make either a tea, aka a tisane, out of it, or you can soak them in, say, vodka or Everclear, depending on whether you're working with fresh or dried, and make a tincture out of it. And as far as the muscle relaxant properties of the cat's ear, as long as you are not mixing other muscle relaxants and barbiturates and so forth with it, really the tincture is probably the way to go. Brandy also works with the dried root if you want something with a slightly more non-vodka flavor. But the leaves and the root of the cat's ear are a potent sedative and muscle relaxant. So really good when you've pulled something or you're just kind of stressed out and everything is tense and you can't find someone to give you a massage. Brandy soaked cat's ear root, good choice. The cat's ear, you will find it in your yard quite often if you, if you don't mow. Where is it? Now the cat's ear is kind of interesting that it wants to grow upright like this, up the leaves and everything growing upwards, but after 2 or 3 mowings, the leaves, instead of growing upright, grow flat along the ground. Like they kind of figure out, the leaf that sticks up gets cut off, so they stay flat against the ground. So if you have what looks like a dandelion, but the leaves are flat against the ground, it's a good chance that it's the cat's ear. So something to look for. Then let it mature, and then dig it up. Like I said, you can use the leaves and the root, but really the root is probably the best choice, just because it's big and potent and powerful. Any questions?
We actually got a flood of questions afterwards. Okay. Do you prepare the burdock as a tea? Like, can you?
Okay, so the burdock. Actually, I go with the tincture with that. I will take the root, peel the outer skin off like I'm doing a carrot, and then just continue to shave it down into little pieces and then chop that up, and then soak it in vodka for 6 to 8 weeks. And after that extraction has finished, strain it out, and then I take the burdock root tincture and actually mix it with an elderberry tincture and a reishi tincture. But just, you know what? I think over there might be some. It would be under burdock. That's it, Medicinal, to look through my wall of extractions. You found it? Oh. Yeah. Okay. So this is burdock and vodka, made a year ago. You can't really see it, but it does turn things kind of a nice red color. I've extracted the main parts out. There's still some little precipitate in there. But this is what I mix with the reishi mixture and the elderberry, because the elderberry gives a general immunity strengthening, infection fighting. The reishi is the anti-cancer and antiviral. And then the burdock is the liver detoxifier. So all three together pretty much make me immortal. Yes.
All right, another question. It's been on hold for quite a while, actually.
Okay.
What can I do with aloe vera besides using it as a burn ointment? They have a lot of it and rarely use it for anything.
Okay, just to jump over to aloe vera. You can eat the pulp inside it. It is quite bitter, but it has a demulcent effect on if you have any sort of really strong throat irritation, stomach upsetness, things like that. I personally don't like it, and normally I like bitter things, but I find the bitterness and there's something about it. I don't know if it's like the cilantro thing where, you know, some people can taste certain chemicals in cilantro. I might pick something up in aloe vera that others don't. But yeah, the pulp. If you go and Google aloe vera pulp medicine, it'll give you different ideas of what to do with that, how to store it. But it can be taken internally and used to fight different things there. So it's not just for burns. And the nice thing about the pulp too, excuse me, is you can store it for a while. I want to say people have even started drying it and making a powder out of it that they can reconstitute in a tea to drink. But I can't guarantee that's a true memory. So look it up. But yeah, the pulp can be used internally to treat different medicinal issues inside.
Okay. Someone asks, what is the key for no education? I was slightly confused.
The key for no education. I really have no idea what you're asking. Can I see the?
I'm not quite sure what they meant, but it's scrolled.
Okay. Can you re-ask that question, and then I'll come back to it. Do we have another?
All right. Would a mixture of cat's ear and passion vine flower be safe?
I would not mix two different sedative plants together. Just as a basic rule of thumb, if it's a sedative, just stick with one. Now, that being said, I know you can go to the store and buy sleepy time tea, and it's a mixture of all these different things. That's great. They can afford much larger, expensive lawyers than I can. So the last thing I need is someone to mix a number of plants that they heard about from me, swig it down with a half a bottle of vodka, die, and get sued. So as far as sedatives go, I always recommend a little bit of caution with them. So especially if you are combining them, making a tincture, the alcoholic extraction, really just stick to one. If it doesn't work, increase the dosage a little bit. If it still doesn't work, then switch to a different plant. But as far as mixing sedatives, especially with alcohol, I personally would be very cautious about that, and I'm not going to recommend it.
All right. Last question. Should you use cat's ear before it flowers?
Okay, from a medicinal point of view, it is fine to harvest the cat's ear after it's flowered. If you're trying to eat it, you're best getting it before it flowers, because once it flowers, it becomes much more bitter. But a number of those bitter compounds are part of the medicinal properties of it, and especially in the case of the root. So it's fine to harvest after it flowers. Got it?
Awesome. That's it.
Okay. So let me jump ahead. Chickweed. Can anyone see? Oops, I guess it helps if I do that. So if anyone can see chickweed, let me know while I bring it up over here. Filling time with noises and sounds. There's a lot of plants that begin with C on Foraging, Texas.
Still waiting for comments to come in, I think.
Okay. Oops, why did that not do that? Chickweed, come on, chickweed. well, I will start talking about chickweed, and you all can catch up when you can. So right now, again, you will be finding chickweed out there. I mentioned it in the edible plants episodes earlier, but it's just as medicinal as it is edible. If you want to know how to find it, how to recognize it, go to www.foragingtexas.com and look up the chickweed post, and we can see chickweed. So let me go back, which is kind of funny because it's the same picture. Okay, so chickweed. This is a wintertime plant down here in the south. Once you get north of the Mason-Dixon line, it becomes a summertime plant. So when I'm up in Minnesota in June or July for a week, there's a lot of chickweed around again, whereas right now is when I'm harvesting it down here. Oops. All right, so the chickweed, like I said, this is a common yard weed, very small, white flowers. If you look really closely at the flowers, it looks like they have 10 petals, but they actually only have 5, but each petal is very deeply cleft, so it looks like 2. Now, the leaves of the chickweed are what we call a demulcent. A demulcent is some sort of compound that helps heal damaged tissue. So if you have inflamed or damaged tissue, a demulcent is particularly good for soothing the soothing the inflammation, and bringing about healing of that tissue. So the chickweed is used as, pretty much anywhere you have mildly damaged tissues, from skinned elbows or knees or palms, like you crash to the ground. You would mash up and make a poultice of the chickweed and slap it on there and let it sit there, and it will help heal it. It also works as an expectorant. So if you just chew on it or make a tea, a tisane out of it, it will help loosen up the phlegm if you have a cold or some sort of, what I call lung cheese, to help cough it out. But generally it's a wound healer. And
there's really bad echo.
There's a really bad echo. Let me do that.
Sorry about this.
No problem. There's all these knobs and dials here. It's really cool. But I know since we had to move, from the east side of the dining room to the west side, we got the reflective wall here, so the sound is bouncing around. So I turned down the microphones some. Hopefully that will help. But chickweed, so its main uses, like I said, as a poultice for damaged skin, mosquito bite, skins, minor burns. Think of it as a weedy, green, non-slimy version of aloe vera. Then also eating it will help break up phlegm and lung cheese and that sort of congestion, the snot and stuff running down your throat, to help you cough it up. There are some mimics to chickweed, and let's see if I can bring these up. Okay, so one is the Scarlet Pimpernel. We will talk about Scarlet Pimpernel again later in this medicinal weeds programs, because alphabetical, it's going to be a while. So Scarlet Pimpernel in small doses is not poisonous. It is quite bitter. It is an appetite stimulant, a couple other properties for it, but it's used sparingly. The other mimic is the horse herb, which also looks very much like chickweed and is found in similar locations. The main difference is the horse herb is a very coarse, rough leaf, and it has tiny yellow flowers with 4 or 5 petals, whereas the chickweed had white. So, like I said, for details, go to www.foragingtexas.com. Look up chickweed on the left-hand side, and it has all sorts of information on how to identify it. And
Question.
Question.
What are the growing conditions for chickweed?
Growing conditions for chickweed. Chickweed is kind of interesting that I find it growing, it likes to be somewhat protected. It seems to like to grow right up against a house or right up against a tree, right up against a fence, but it likes cool, moist, shady sort of plant growing areas. Especially in the fall when the first bits of chickweed start showing up, look for them on the north side of houses and so forth where they're in the shade and cool. And I find it growing there several weeks, 3, 4 weeks in advance of general chickweedness growing everywhere. But it likes yards, fields, kind of manicured, maintained areas. It does not like to compete with tall grasses or other weeds. It really seems to like, being the tallest plant around. And considering, it's only like 3 or 4 inches tall, it requires much shorter plants around it. So yards along buildings, starting on the north side and then creeping out from there as the winter progresses. Another one?
All right, the question. We have 1/4 of an acre of chickweed. Is it worth storing, and how can we do this?
Holy, okay. Is Rachel Galen watching tonight? I don't know if she is. So Rachel is the lady curator, person in charge of Cato Mounds Historic Site, one of the places that I teach. I'll be there April 6th, but she is also a studying herbalist. And one of the things she makes is a chickweed tincture, which is mainly used to fight infections, to help healing. And then she also says that it helps with abscesses and cysts. So if you have a lump of something under your skin, it helps shrink that when used both internally and topically. So basically with the chickweed, drying it, if you just dry it, air dry it, it loses a lot of its medicinal properties. But if you can make a alcohol tincture, it will store, and then you can use some of its properties, not so much its demulcent properties, but some of the other internal fixing properties. Something I would also try, and I haven't yet personally, just because I don't have enough chickweed to do this, but I would try a hot oil infusion where you basically take 1 part chickweed and 1 part, say, sunflower oil or olive oil, combine them up. You want to chop up the chickweed as much as possible, the green chickweed. Chop it up, chop, 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 because you're trying to increase the surface area and rupture as many cells as possible. Put it in a jar, half fill, whoops. So let's just say, we have this jar, you'd fill it about halfway with the chickweed, and then fill it up to the top with olive oil, sunflower seed oil, grapeseed oil, not coconut oil, but one of the common vegetable oils, and heat it, bring water to boiling, put the jar in the boiling water, turn off the heat, and let it sit overnight. Do that 3 times, 3 nights in a row, where you put the oil chickweed mixture in some boiling water, and then immediately turn the water off. What you're doing is you're just speeding up the extraction process, but you're also hopefully killing any bacteria or microbes that might be on the surface of the chickweed, and basically sterilizing what you're getting and making an infused oil. The medicinal compounds from the chickweed can infuse into the oil. Then you strain out the chickweed and use that oil as a medicated cream. Again, use it as minor skin irritation, inflammation, minor wound, things like that. If you want to thicken it up, then you can add beeswax to it. For basically every half cup of infused oil, add between 14 and 16 grams of melted beeswax, stir it together, and it will turn into more like a balm or a salve sort of thing. But it will have a lot of the medicinal properties of the chickweed. Any other questions?
Yep, we got a lot actually.
Oh, okay.
All right, so can and should you dry chickweed?
Okay. So like I just said, no, don't bother drying chickweed. If you're going to, if you have more than you can use right away, make the alcohol tincture, or in my opinion, the infused oil process that I just talked about would be a better way of storing the medicinal properties of chickweed.
Alright, so about the infused oil, can you use coconut oil or canola oil for infusions?
Okay, you can. The problem with coconut oil is when you apply coconut oil to your skin, believe it or not, it actually works kind of as a drying agent. So the coconut oil is generally not recommended for medicinal salves, balms, creams, anything like that, because it will dry out the skin. With canola oil, yeah, there's fine there. I know a lot of people have issues with canola oil. Most of it is a genetically modified type stuff, or it just has a general bad rap. I personally like the just olive oil. One of the big benefits of olive oil is it is so loaded with antioxidants that its shelf stability is a lot longer than a lot of other oils. Can, do I have a copy of my medicinal plant book? No, my medicinal. Nope. Okay. If you take one of my medicinal workshops, one of the things we discuss is the properties of, nope, not that one, the different oils and where you might use one oil over another. Say like grapeseed oil. One of the nice things about grapeseed oil is it is really good at basically causing the tissue to swell, which removes the fine lines if you get like the wrinkles around your eyes and so forth. If you're using something on your face, they recommend a grapeseed oil. If you are doing something where rather than on the skin but down in the muscles themselves, you want it to be absorbed quickly, that's where the sunflower seed oil comes into play. It gets rapidly absorbed into the skin, taking whatever is with it down into the skin. So the choice of oil when you're making these different infused oils, there's actually a little bit of thought and reasoning behind which one you would use. But coconut oil, coconut butter in general are frowned upon and not recommended for making medicinal oils, just from the fact that they're very drying to the skin. So.
All right. So how about beef tallow? Apparently somebody uses that on their skin.
Yeah, beef tallow is fine. The one issue with the meat tallows is sometimes they can go rancid fairly quickly. So if you are using beef tallow or bacon fat or some of the other meat-based fats, you really want to keep the product in the refrigerator and use it quickly. Make small batches. You may even be able to freeze it, but with the beef tallow or pork fat or goat fat or duck fat, bear fat. Bear fat was pretty much the fat of choice by the Native Americans, at least where there were bears, for making the medicinal creams. So yeah, the animal fats are fine, but just be aware that they can go rancid more quickly, so small doses are better. Another question.
All right, so can you use a food processor for chopping the chickweed?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I usually don't because I like knives. And I find it easier to wash a knife than it is to take apart a food processor and do that. But yeah, food processors are fine. It's really something you should have in your kitchen for doing a lot of both just wild edible foods and medicinal type plant stuff. Yeah, no problems with the food processor as long as you're willing to clean it properly afterwards.
No more questions.
No more questions. And it is 8:49, so we have to... Oh,
One more.
One more.
Can you do that and then just rub it on the wound? Like blend it and just rub it on?
Yeah.
Like a poultice?
Yep, exactly. Especially, we're talking chickweed here, I assume. Yeah, traditionally the way the chickweed poultice was made is people take a wad of the chickweed, chew it up in their mouth, and then slap it on their wound. A food processor would probably be a little more sterile than that. So, yeah, there's no issue there. If you liquefy the chickweed, like if you really process it up, what works well, if you get some cheesecloth or some gauze and put a wad of the slurry in the cheesecloth, make like a cheesecloth or gauze sandwich, and then put that with the gauze down. Enough of the ooze from the ground up chickweed will soak through the bandage and go where it needs to go on the wound or the inflamed skin. We have another one. I like tonight. We're getting lots of questions.
First of all, what about beaver lard? And second of all, how much beeswax per 1/2 cup of infused oil?
Let me guess. Hey, Kevin.
Yep, Mr. Rez.
All right. So, he's my main man. Yeah, beaver fat would be fine, especially the tail. The tail of the beavers is very loaded with fat. It was a great source used by the Native Americans for fats for leather working, leather protecting, and that sort of thing, leather softening. Oh, side note, completely forgot. So, you know the Workman's Friend, my real job type stuff. We're coming out with a leather conditioner, leather restorer type product. Should be on Amazon maybe within the next few weeks. But yeah, so the animal fats, as long as you keep an eye on it, make sure they're not going rancid, you're good to go. And what was Kevin's other question?
Oh, it wasn't Mr. Kevin. Stephanie Walker asks, how much beeswax per 1/2 cup of infused oil?
Okay, so to turn a infused oil into more of a salve or a balm, which is thicker than a lotion or a cream, but between 14 and 16 grams of beeswax per 1/2 cup of infused oil. Start with 14. What I do is I will have the wax in a jar, put the jar in a boiler so the wax melts, pour it into the infused oil while stirring. The melted wax will start to solidify and it'll separate out from the infused oil, but then take the infused oil wax mixture and put that in the hot water and stir it up until it melts. You get a nice homogeneous mixture, and then take it out, let it cool down, poke at it some, let it cool for a good 2-3 hours, because the viscosity, the thickness will somewhat depend on temperature, so you want to make sure it's cooled all the way through. Poke at it. If you like the consistency at 14 grams, you're good to go. If you don't, if you think it's still a bit runny, kind of greasy, then go back and jump it up to the 16 and see what you think of that. And then whatever you found you like, whenever you make an infused oil with any sort of plant material, use that amount of beeswax with it.
So 1/2 cup and 1/2 ounce?
14 grams is 1/2. Yeah, it's cool having a kid that's actually in chemistry right now.
It was actually Mr. Rest.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not that smart.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
All right. Oh, 8:53. So actually now is a good time to start wrapping this up. Because we've already gone through quite a bit of stuff here. Give you a chance to think and come up with any more questions. Like I said, feel free to keep asking questions. I will go back after the show and go through and answer things that have been missed. Shout out again to Ensign Niren. Again, your mom says you're awesome and you enjoy all the plant stuff, so that's really great to hear. And she just loves you very much and asks that I go, hey, Ensign, you're awesome. So, hey, everyone, thumbs up to Ensign. Thumb up. Okay. Who knows? Maybe someday when Merriwether or Miniweather leaves, I can have Ensign weather. Okay. Words of wisdom. I had some great words of wisdom. Oh, I remember my words of wisdom this time. So, there's like the golden rule, do unto others as you wish you would do unto them. There's a whole bunch of rules like that. And I can't remember who came up with this rule. It was probably Robert Heinlein, or I want to say some science fiction writer, but basically it boils down to never attribute to malice what can be explained by stupidity. So most of the times when someone does something really mean to you, it's not because they hate you, it's because they themselves just are clueless. Now, my extension of this law, based on experience, is not only could it be due to stupidity or cluelessness, but also just plain laziness. Sometimes things, people, don't do things not because they're trying to hurt you, it's just because they're too lazy to be bothered to do something. They are trapped in their own little world. Now, of course, this doesn't make it any better. It's still really, really, really annoying. But at least now you have, you can think to yourself, okay, they may not be out to get me. They just may be stupid and lazy. Okay.
Last question.
Last question.
I got some horsetail plants. Any advice on where and how to plant them?
Horsetails, they like moist areas. If you have a pond or a stream or a wet area in your yard, that's where you want to plant them. They kind of like sandy soil too, so if you can amend, if you have kind of a heavy clay soil in that area, you want to mix in sand with it. Now, be warned, once the horsetails get established, they will spread. If you ever looked at a horsetail, they are the ones that kind of look, let me just bring this up here, almost like bamboo, and they really spread like bamboo. So, yeah, this is the thing. It's a very, very primitive, this is like from the dinosaur time plant, but it's still around here. The cool thing about the horsetail is it is loaded with the chemical that the human body uses to build cartilage from. And so if you have some sort of sprain, strain, or joint injury, not really so much arthritis, but kind of an acute injury as opposed to a long chronic disease, it will help heal that more quickly. But that's another class. So at this point, really, like I said, we did not have any sponsors tonight. But if you want to be a sponsor, you can contact me at Merriwether at foragingtexas.com or send me a direct message through Facebook Live here. We can get your name. Oh, I almost had it up here under me. Get lots of people seeing this. Usually by the end of the week, over 2,000 people will have watched these episodes, which is kind of cool. Also, if you are one of those unsung heroes out there, you can support. There is a wish list over on Amazon. Put up the link. You just want to buy us stuff. That's always cool. Appreciate
buy
it.
my dad's stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So I keep telling Medicinal that she needs to put some stuff on this wish list. So if someone wanted to buy her something as a thank you, or hey, you're a cool kid, something like that, they could. And I've raised her to be un-American because she really doesn't want anything. I got everything.
You guys' love and all that is totally enough for me. And watching you come on this journey with my dad and just be so happy about what he does and genuinely make him happy. Because let's be honest, he has a stressful work day and he comes home so tired and just worn out and done with people sometimes. And y'all give him hope, y'all give him happiness, and that's literally all I could ask from you guys. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Wow. I got lucky with this one. The other one, but this one's a good kid. All right. Well, we got like another minute to go, but I am going to end it now on a high note because how could I possibly top that? So thank you all for watching. We'll be back here next week. Same plant time, same plant channel. The notices will go out in a bit. Until then, just be happy. There's a lot of cool things in this world to be happy about. It may not seem like it at times. And if you're feeling that way, go for a walk in the woods. Unless you're a soldier carrying an 80-pound pack through enemy territory, walking in the woods is a really great place to be. Okay, on that note, good night, everyone.